I didn't get my gavel out, make it official. And good afternoon. I'm going to go ahead and call this session of the Gig Harbor Hearing Examiner to order. I think I can hear at least someone. Can we maybe just mute everyone but me just for the moment? Okay, we'll try that again. So good afternoon. I'm going to go ahead and call this session of the Gig Harbor Hearing Examiner to order. For the record, today is March 21st, 2023, just after 1:30. And we have one item on the agenda today. This is essentially numbers PLSDP 210001, PLDR 210233, and PLSEPA 210001 related to a request to extend sewer and water service from a water main off of Soundview Drive to the existing historic Carabocia, I think, net shed located over water in the Narrows area of Puget Sound. And this would be accessory to the existing structure and provide restroom facilities. And this is essentially, again, kind of off Narrows over. If you live in the area, you've probably seen it. When I go to the other side of Tacoma, I can kind of see it from there. But that said, the location tends to be off Harborview and Soundview, but 2854 Soundview Lane and 2788 Harborview Drive. And the site itself, combined where the activity would take place, is approximately 1.17 acres. That said, my name is Ada Reeves. I'm a hearing examiner with Sound Law Center, who the city has selected to preside over certain hearings like this one. And today it will be my role to collect evidence in the form of exhibits and testimony to determine whether this proposal is consistent with the city's comprehensive plan, zoning ordinances, critical areas ordinances, and the specific requirements for approval, in this case, of multiple permits that are being sought. So to that end, I did review several things in advance of the hearing. Ultimately, it was right about, I guess, 18 or so. I'm never good when they're letters, not numbers, but it included a staff report, thorough staff report prepared by city staff, the plan materials themselves, information for the JARPA, or Joint Aquatic Resources Permit application, which will indicate that there's going to be probably some involvement by others with jurisdiction as well for in-water work, and we can talk more about that. Also reviewed a no net loss report addressing impacts on the shoreline, information on other critical areas adjacent to the area or within the area. There was a third-party review of some of these reports, information on trees in the area, information on geotechnical aspects, a inadvertent discovery plan that has been prepared, some information on access and things like that in relation to utilities, and then information on the notice that occurred in relation to the application as well as today's hearing. There were a few public comments that were received, and I did have an opportunity to review those, and they've been broken out as in a way that we have comments that were received in relation to the notice of application, as well as those that were received in relation to the SEPA determination. And that was another thing I reviewed, which was the determination that was made under the state's Environmental Policy Act, and that ended up being a DNS, or determination of non-significance, that was issued. So I think that was most of them. If I missed any, we can talk about it. But my role, as we've discussed, and in this instance, we're kind of looking at all the big picture things, including our State Shoreline Management Act. So in addition to the things I've mentioned in relation to the Shoreline Management Act, in relation to the Growth Management Act, I'll also be looking at certain aspects of our State Shoreline Management Act, the Shoreline Master Program that's been adopted by Gig Harbor, as well as ensuring that the proposal is consistent with the Department of Ecology's adopted regulations that have been accepted by the city of Gig Harbor. And I think those are in 173, 26, and 27 of the Washington Administrative Code. I didn't have time to write it down. So with that, I think we'll get started, and the plan will be we'll go first and hear from city staff who kind of give an overview and explain how we got here. And then after that, after we've heard from staff, we'll turn to the applicant team, as it were. And I believe we do have several members of the team that are here to participate. And so is there someone that I should kind of look to as maybe is Stephen Bridgeford as maybe the person that can direct traffic when I get to that point in the hearing?
That is correct. Yes, Mr. Hearing Examiner.
Thank you. So when we get to that point, we'll do that. And then folks from the public will have an opportunity to participate or testify if they are interested. I don't actually believe we have any members of the public at the moment. Is that right? As far as we can tell? Okay, well,
That's correct. There's no public attending so far.
Excellent. So when we get to that point, though, we will check and give folks that opportunity. And then if necessary at the end, we'll come back for any response from the applicant and members of the public. I note that all testimony today will be under oath or affirmation. And that's because the decision to be appealed, the recording of the hearing, as well as the decision, would serve as the foundation for any such appeal. And I may and often do ask questions of those that are testifying. It's not trying to trip anyone up. I'm just trying to make sure I have a thorough understanding of the proposal so that I can produce a decision that is hopefully clear and legally defensible. So I think with that, we can go ahead and get started. Folks will generally remain, muted until called upon to speak. And at some point, maybe we should talk about the notice because it did have some language that was a little different apart from the time, just to make sure I don't normally require people to hit the button and there's no strict rules. I think it was probably something that had been used for a council meeting, but we don't, as long as staff is not worried about it, we can in relation to this project. And I want to make sure we're confident folks knew when the meeting was and had an opportunity to participate, but then the rest we could perhaps deal with a different day, non-specific to this project. But with that, I think we'll go first to Robin Bolster Grant, representing the city today. So we'll get Robin sworn in. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth in the testimony you give here today?
I do.
Thank you. And can you just state and spell your name for the recording and explain who you are?
You bet. Robin Bolster Grant, ROBIN BOLSTER-GRANT, and I am a principal planner for the city of Gig Harbor.
The principal is your pal. That's how you spell it. I still remember that.
I remember that little mnemonic. Very
There
good.
you go. Well, thank you for being here. And just at the outset, did my sort of assessment of the exhibits, was the number right? Did I miss anything? I think it was P. The letter P was the final one that I had received. Is that track with what you were hoping I would review?
I'm sorry, letter, you're talking about the
exhibits that I received in advance. I just wanted to make sure that
yes.
it went from
Yes.
A to
P.
there you go.
Exhibits, sorry, yes.
That's all. I just wanted to make sure. And so I'm going to deem those admitted. But if anyone has additional exhibits they'd like admitted when it's your opportunity to testify, let me know and I'll address admitting additional exhibits at that time. So with that, please proceed with.
Okay, thank you. As stated, this project consists of an extension of approximately 300 lineal feet of sewer and water lines, providing service to the existing Tarabocha net shed, which is located over water in the Tacoma Narrows portion of Puget Sound. The service utilities are accessory to the existing net shed structure. About 120 feet of utility lines are to be constructed in ground. Another roughly 180 feet, I think, will be constructed on grade. That largely reflects the steepness of the slope as it comes down toward the water, and some previous instability in portions of that area. The applicant can talk more about that if needed. So the lines would run from the main on Soundview across the adjacent parcel to the west. That's at 2854 Soundview Lane. An easement will be required across that adjacent parcel. And we do have a condition that requires the easement to be recorded with the county prior to the issuance of any subsequent permits. All activities associated with the proposed utility extension do occur within 200 feet of the ordinary high water mark. Therefore, the project is regulated under the city's shoreline master program and requires a substantial development permit. Both the adjacent property and the property developed with the net shed are located in the R2 or medium density zone district and the residential medium comprehensive plan designation. The proposal is consistent with both the code and the comprehensive plan as an accessory use to an existing structure. The properties are governed by the low intensity shoreline environmental designation under the shoreline master program. The proposal is consistent with the review criteria for substantial development permits, as it does promote the use of the shoreline while protecting against adverse effects to public health, land, vegetation, wildlife, and waters of the state. The low intensity environmental designation does include water-oriented commercial and recreational uses. The proposed utility extension would be accessory to the net shed, which is actually water dependent. And the proposal is to maintain that as a working commercial net shed. Net sheds specifically are discussed in chapter 7.16 of the SMP, which states in part the continued use of historic net sheds in support of commercial fishing should be the top priority for such structures. And again, in this case, that net shed is intended for continued use as a working commercial net shed, and the utilities would simply provide sanitation for that structure. The extension of water and sewer service does not expand, enlarge, or otherwise impact either the shore itself, other than the extension of those lines. There is no additional overwater development as a result of this. Any vegetation removal caused by the trenching activity will be required to be restored per the habitat management plan that was submitted for this, and also notes on the site plan indicate largely hand seeding. If there is any inadvertent disturbance to existing trees, there is a requirement that those be replaced on a 2-to-1 ratio. The commercial uses allowed in this low intensity shoreline environmental designation do give preference to water dependent and water related commercial uses. All are allowed. And again, utilities would simply bring sanitation to the existing net shed. There is no proposed alteration other than the attachment of the utilities to the net shed. As I said, no additional overwater construction, and really very little, if any, in water that based on what I've seen, and again, the applicant can elucidate a little bit more. There's nothing other than attaching the utilities to the shed itself. There's no other disturbance to the shoreline. The applicant has submitted a no net loss analysis, joint aquatic resource permit, and the habitat assessment and management plan, which was reviewed by the city's third-party consultant for accuracy and completeness. And they concurred that, in fact, no net loss is anticipated, and no habitat impacts are expected from this proposal. The notice of application, well, let me say, we did take in and review the project for compliance with our design manual. There's really no exterior change. There's no exterior changes, visible changes to the net shed itself. The trenching will be revegetated, so there really wasn't anything of concern in terms of the design manual. other than making sure that the disturbed area do get reseeded, revegetated. I'll talk about this a little bit more, but we're asking for that to be included in the language of the easement. And that's also a condition of approval. So the notice of application, the determinant of non-significance, and notice of public hearing have all been prepared in accordance with Title 19 of the Harbor Municipal Code and state law. We did receive, as you noted, comments from 2 local tribal representatives who consider this area culturally significant. In response to those concerns, I did add, proposed to add a condition of approval that would require an archaeological monitor to be present during all trenching and other ground disturbing activities. I know that there was an inadvertent disturbance plan, if you will, but based on the comments that we received from the Puyallup and Squaxin tribal representatives, we thought that it would be appropriate to honor their request and require an archaeologist to be on site.
So sorry.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, so it's sort of the in between approach, to the extent that you've got the full-blown study in advance, where often I read about all the way through the Paleological age and where the dinosaurs were and everything, versus if you find something, call everybody. This is were this to be approved, excuse me, were this to be approved, work would be able to proceed. But not only if you find something, stop, but have an expert there to kind of, identify. That's the concept, correct?
We do, yes, exactly. And because this area has been called out by not just 1, but 2 local tribal representatives as significant, I think that's a prudent step without going to a full, as you said, a full report. In addition to comments from the local tribal representatives, we did receive comments from the Department of Ecology, as we usually do. They're fairly straightforward boilerplate, but have, of course, been incorporated as a condition of approval. The appeal period for the DNS, the determination of non-significance, ended yesterday with no appeals having been received. Because the project, as proposed, designed, incorporates mitigations respective to the trenching activities, the determination of non-significance felt appropriate. No additional mitigations were called for. I do have one correction. There's always at least one kind of embarrassing correction. If I'm lucky, it's one to the staff report. And that would be on page 2. Section 3C1. That last sentence should read 60% and not 6%, which is not generally of concern. And the lower portion again of the adjacent property as it comes down to the net shed is pretty steep.
Yeah, 6% was the threshold, then our contour engineering folks would be busy literally all the time. Sorry to interrupt, but yes, 60% makes a little more sense. Absolutely.
Yes, thank you. Sorry about that. But if that's the only kind of boo-boo, then I count that a success. I also have 2 proposed revisions to the conditions of approval. If we can turn to that. So on page 10, condition number 2, I'd like to add so 2 sentences to the end of that condition about the draft easement. I will note that the easement that I attached and the only draft easement that that was available to me did not include an exhibit C with a map. So I would like to add to condition number 2 Exhibit C of the utility easement agreement shall conform to the approved site plan. And then the second sentence, easement shall reference the required revegetation of all disturbed areas, because that will also occur in that same area on the adjacent parcel, so.
And if someone can, if you can send that language, I was thinking,
No
I was
problem.
thinking, and I thought you were saying there was this attachment C within Exhibit J that was missing, so I was waiting to start writing. And I assume
Included, and I'm assuming that that was because it is a draft and the location of the easement trenching and that easement line, that did change. And so, so they kept the draft language in draft form and didn't have a final map associated with that. So I'm just requiring, and I'll send you my language, just requiring them to have an Exhibit C that conforms to the approved site plan.
okay, one sec, I just want to make sure I'm not, okay. Overthinking probably. And I don't know if we're able to just, when you say have an Exhibit C, you don't mean, again,
I don't mean my exhibit, sorry. If you, yeah.
my problem, so
No, exhibit attachment, exhibit, yeah, in this case, it's labeled. So, sorry, I'm flipping through here. So the existing attachment that you have. I'm scrambling to
that's
pull
good.
up, is Exhibit J, sorry about that. So if you look, and you don't have to, but within our Exhibit J, the city's Exhibit J, there is an Exhibit C, sort of a exhibit, if you will, that says easement area. And the language refers to that, but it's blank. So,
Got it. Well, so essentially, is the plan then to end up with the revised Exhibit J also?
oh,
That would be the other option, was
I
just
hadn't
change out the old one, but we can ask the applicant when we get to that point.
that, if that's easier, I hadn't thought along those lines. Because it was a draft, I thought I would just say, they have to, there is a condition that the condition that we were just talking about that requires the recordation of the easement to cross the adjacent property. And I just wanted to make sure, and maybe it's redundant, that their map that goes with that when they record it matches the approved site plan. But
Sure.
maybe it's redundant.
We can come full circle and ask them, but you have
Yeah.
seen the revised J to the point that you feel confident that that is what it's gonna look like, and
I do.
people know their meets and bounds, the lines are in the
They're
right.
gonna have to have all that when they
All right.
submit, and all that will be verified before they start work.
Sure, so we'll come back. I guess in my mind, I think I'd probably just change it out, but that way the record is just,
Change it.
up to date, clear, but
No, change.
I'll wait.
Okay. I leave it to you.
yeah, well, I just want to, we'll ask the applicant here in a
Okay.
minute, but why don't you finish first?
Got
And
it.
then
I have
we'll-
one
we'll
more
full circle.
condition to add, and that is to just language to add to the existing, really for clarification, and that is condition number 9 on page 11. So at the end of the sentence, instead of a period, I would put a comma followed by quotes with watertight housing. So the
Right, so
idea
it would
there.
say, applicant shall protect pumps or other mechanical equipment associated with the sewer and or water lines against damage in the event of a flood, comma, with,
Watertight housing.
okay,
Watertight is a term of art around here, so.
and just to be clear, I certainly understand the idea of a flood event. I guess in the area, is there also any concern about the resulting potential, mudslide, like, kind of anything like that, or that wouldn't be applicable? I'm not trying to make anything harder. I'm just trying to understand.
I think the site might, and I'm not an engineer, I'll leave it, we have engineers on the line here. My understanding is that the site itself is stable. The issue is, and it's not in a mapped flood zone, but because of our recent experience with king tides, we had flooding in portions of the downtown. And so the concern here is that you have water and effluent. And if the king tide comes up, we don't want anything to happen to that. So it needs to be secured and watertight.
Sure. Okay. Well, we'll get more on that as well. We don't need to really dive into effluent, but we'll get more on the good engineering. Terrible joke.
I try to not.
But if anyone is able to use the word lahar in their explanation, they get bonus points. Because that was something,
Oh, interesting.
that was something we always wanted to try to get into a Court of Appeals opinion as clerks 20 years ago, is the mudslide when Mount Rainier blows. But if you don't know it, don't worry about it. Not important. But I just really, in all seriousness, wanted to make sure I understood what everybody was trying to have. And I get the idea of just making sure that nothing escapes the pipes. So,
Okay, so based on the submitted information and revised conditions, site inspection, and the analysis contained in the staff report, staff finds that the proposed improvements are generally consistent with the Shoreline Management Act, as proposed, and employing the best management practices outlined in the narrative and incorporated into the habitat assessment plan. The proposal is consistent with the requirements of WAC 173-27-150. And we recommend approval of this request. Thank you so much.
Great. I do have just a few more questions, and actually you were right in the area I wanted to start at, which was I'm guessing they're kind of historically, these are things that just got put in, like to the extent of, I always worry about 10 and 11, those types of conditions. What do they mean to the extent that applicant shall maintain any required replacement tree? Often you'll have a plan, a requirement of 10 years or 5 years. If the applicant is confident they can maintain them for 200, that's great. We do have trees in the area that are capable of that with enough love, but meaning to the extent of, is there an actual, they need to follow the arborist report or the mitigation report? I just,
No, you're right. That's shall maintain any required replacement trees on the subject site for a period of not less than 5 years is standard.
Sure, or consistent with the requirements of,
in accordance with the tree assessment.
there you go. I think we can ask what they think, but I only do this because I have seen things happen, down the road where you go, well, nobody thought about that. Okay, then the very next one, Public Works Department, all nice people, but is there a specific, all measures required through the review process that has already occurred forevermore?
But the only specific condition that that I'm aware of had to do with the recordation of the easement, and I incorporated that. I don't know. I hate to put Stephanie on the spot. I'm not sure of any other specific conditions, but that is kind of a catch-all,
Sure. And I guess to the extent as if I compare it to, say, number 8, which is very clear and easy to follow in terms of the specificity, so when I'm done with our principal planner, if our public works representative could just touch on that, or if we could just quickly touch on it, Stephanie Seibel, do you have?
Yeah.
Are you ready? Do you swear, I think I'm getting, okay, there we go. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth in testimony you give here today?
I do.
And if you could just spell your name and explain who you are.
Stephanie Seibel, STEPHANIE SEIBEL. And I am the Associate Engineer with Public Works Engineering.
Thank you. So I know it's kind of nitpicky, but I wanted to try to understand what the condition was meant to convey. Is it the idea of the comments that went through the iterative review process or some other thing? If you could just touch on that idea.
The condition of they need to maintain the materials.
Sorry, the number 11 that just says adhere to all measures required by the department.
Okay, I'm sorry, I don't have a copy of those.
Sorry, it specifically says, it specifically says the applicant shall adhere to all measures required by the Public Works Department, period. So
Yeah,
nothing about a report or a date or a reason or a.
That would be everything we've already gone through in the review process for the permit.
Okay,
Yes.
so essentially, as detailed in Public Works comments, up through the review process. I can see a problem with something being that broad. But if you have other ideas on the timeline, please let me know, because this is definitely the time to ask, meaning if it is forevermore, the applicant might have thoughts. I mean, not that they get to break the code, but things change and, so that's all.
Right, no, they just need to meet the code and their approved permit
Excellent.
requirements.
Great. Thank you. And did you have any other thoughts about things? What thoughts about things? Thoughts about this specific proposal while I have you?
Just to add to the watertight comments, the other reason why we want it watertight is we don't want seawater entering our sewer system.
Oh, yeah.
And yes, during the last king tide, where we also had the storm surges with it, that net shed, along with many other net sheds and additional areas Robin had alluded to in downtown, were flooded. And this pump will be mounted underneath the floorboards, so we just want to make sure, along with the effluent that Robin mentioned getting out, we don't want seawater getting in.
Because that has its own issues, right? It can be
Yes,
corrosive from the inside, among other things. Okay, just thank you. Anything further at that point? I just want to make sure I didn't cut you off. I apologize.
no, that is the only concern that Public Works has at this time.
Thank you so much. And then I'll go back to Rob Bolster-Grant for a moment. I just want to make sure, go through my notes. Okay. Just making sure. And we already talked about that. We're going to talk to the applicant. Okay. Now here's I think you're delineating it for me on page 10. I always like to check what everyone thinks the hearing examiner, should produce a decision on when it's a multi-permit matter. So is it just the shoreline substantial development permit and a design review, which is going to be very minimal, I would expect, but which you testified to, but just want to make sure I didn't miss anything. And
Nope.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. All right, so that was clear. And okay, and then as far as you already discussed there being no appeals under SEPA, but as far as we're aware, no additional comments came in last minute at this point.
That's correct.
Okay. Then I think the only other random question I had, and maybe I didn't understand kind of the order in the exhibit, but I think it was Dave Winfield, at one point had provided a link, I think to a website, and I just wanted to know what I do with that. I don't do anything with that. I mean, I know the area pretty well. I just don't want to go outside the scope of what I should be looking at. If this city has any thoughts, go ahead.
I'm not sure. I didn't have a chance to circle back with him and of course, well, not of course, I'm the third planner on the project, so I don't know the context, but it seemed to me that it really was about the history of the net shed itself and the historic nature of it. I'm not sure why that was of interest, if that was in response to a question. I found it interesting to give the background on the structure, but because we're not changing the structure other than attaching the lines and the pump, I did not see those as being relevant, but of course had to include them as responsive to our noticing.
Well, and so I guess he sort of in his comment, he said, well, and maybe I hope I didn't miss it, is what I'm saying is he has a link to the website. Is that actually what ended up being? Is that what I'm looking at on page 3 of M? Is that the actual website as a PDF, as far as you're aware? That's where I got confused. So if you go further down, no, it's a confusing thing. That's why I thought I would ask. If we're looking at the PDF number of Exhibit M, as in, I'm glad Major League Baseball is letting the World Baseball Classic happen. That was a terrible. Okay, you go down to page 16.
Okay.
Sorry, I said Winfield. David Winfrey. I apologize.
Winfrey, right.
Watching.
You all up track.
As discussed, here's this website to link to, and I was terrified of going somewhere I shouldn't have, and so I just couldn't tell. So I don't know if you knew or had any thoughts, and I'm happy to see if the applicant has any thoughts. I didn't know what it was, or if that's the 20 pages I was looking at.
That is largely the previous, 2 through 15 or whatever is that same printout of the history coming from, I'm assuming from the state, from DAP or something. Yep.
Okay.
Nothing else
Excellent.
there on that link. It's just a retread.
Good. Okay. Just making sure, because yeah, I don't want to go down the wrong rabbit hole on the internet. We know that's never a good thing. Okay. I think then at this point, I think we can move to, well, finally, as the city, updated or amended its comprehensive plan, zoning ordinances, in this case, it's shoreline master program or any of these things in a way that would have an impact potentially where I would have to think about complex things like vesting that you're aware of.
No.
My favorite answer. Okay. So I don't believe then I had any further questions this moment for you. So why don't we then go to Stephen Bridgeford, who agreed to sort of lead the charge on behalf of the applicant, I believe. Is that right?
Yes,
And you are by trade not an attorney, correct?
that is correct.
Okay, so I will swear you in. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth in the testimony you give here today?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. And I don't know Mr. Bridgeford personally, but I recognize the name from other reports. And, I just point out that attorneys sometimes get sworn at, but we swear in non-attorneys because they testify. And if you could spell your name for the record and explain your role here.
Yeah, so it's Stephen Bridgeford. It's STEPHEN and BRIDGEFORD. And I am a senior land planner with Contour Engineering LLC located in Gig Harbor.
Great. Thank you so much for being here. And you're serving as the agent or applicant representative at the moment, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. This is then your opportunity to present any additional information, any clarification for myself or the public Anything you want to point out more specifically to me or clarify in the record, and talk about any additional exhibits if you thought you wanted to include any. So please go right ahead.
Great, wonderful, thank you. I think as we kind of already covered, we've been hired by Mr. Nick Teraboccia, the owner of the Net Shed, Contour Engineering being the to represent the his property, his project through with the city for the service utility, the sewer and water connections to his Net Shed. And today I'm joined by Kyle Rose. He's a professional engineer at Contour Engineering, and with Kyle Rose is Mr. Teraboccia. They're in our main conference room in our offices, so they'll be available to, I'll kind of cover our quick kind of summary and comments, and they'll be available to help with any questions that I'm not able to answer or feel they would be a better fit to answer, or if they have any issues as we've heard from staff or questions that you've asked that they would like to get some clarification on. To kind of start, the staff report prepared by the city and provided as the Exhibit A, we find it to be very thorough and accurate. I don't feel I need to go through and re-summarize their summary of the project and what we're trying to accomplish. I do want to kind of stress the importance of this project in connecting the not only historic but working Net Shed to kind of general sanitary means for the folks that are down there working in there. And so they have they have kind of appropriate working conditions, and also to protect the local health of the Puget Sound and those sorts of things as there's people working in there. So getting that sewer and water connection to this Net Shed has been something that Mr. Teraboccia has been trying to accomplish for quite some time. He had another consultant working with him to get this done. So he's very anxious and eager to kind of see us at this point adhering to kind of be able to move forward to getting the formal civil plans done and the building connected. Given the nature of the site, being that the Net Shed is both over water and kind of sitting about 104 vertical feet below the utility connections, there's a lot of consideration my office did in the appropriate way to make this connection, and doing the combination of in-ground utilities before we get to the top of bank, and then putting utilities on grade, and in both consultation with our wetland biologist and geotechnical engineer, we found it was the best way to accomplish the task. And as Ms. Bolster-Grant mentioned, there will be no, at this point at least, there's no planned in-water work. Everything is coming down the slope. It'll be connecting to the existing boardwalk Net Shed. So kind of everything is connected to the existing building in place. So there won't be any need for any of our kind of in-water permits that we would see with the Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife. I think that that acronym is escaping me at the moment on what that permit is, but we've got confirmation from them that that they won't be asking us to pursue that. Also in the kind of nature of the project, using these 3-inch insulated lines coming across the slope that are, generally flexible, pushing these pipes down the slope, won't have substantial impacts to the vegetation. There may be some, clearing that happens from the pushing or just hand clearing in order to get up the line to stake these pipes into the ground so they aren't shifting and adjusting. But so it'll be, it should be about as low impact as one could do to install a utility down these slopes. So we've already outlined with the biologist, what would be needed as we make this kind of installation work and work with the inspectors and that sort of thing, what would be needed to do if impacts are greater than we anticipated in order to provide mitigation.
Mr. Bridgeford, I think you used the word vector. You cut out
Oh, did
just
I? Okay.
momentarily. I don't know if anyone else had that problem. If you could just kind of repeat the last 4 or 5 seconds.
Okay, so it's probably vegetation. So any impacts to the vegetation could be we kind of have a plan already on the steps that would be need to take to impact that. I think it's also important to note that there's an easement that I think the neighbors to the let me orient myself. This slope has kind of been mowed over the years to preserve people's view easements. I think that's coming from the condominium development immediately to the south of us. Make sure my map is oriented. So there has been, vegetation has been modified over the years. So so kind of once we get in there and adjust things, we obviously don't want to leave a bare spot going down the slope, but to replant it with the seeds and any trees if we have to pull anything out.
Is there maybe an exhibit we could, if someone is able to share screen, you could throw up just real quick in the record? When people go back, if for any reason they needed to, being able to sort of connect what you're talking to a thing, if possible. I don't want to
for this clearing easement. Is that?
Yeah, either the number itself.
Yeah.
So
just a
try
reference
to
to
follow along, or even
Yeah.
better, if someone can share screen while you're talking. Both are good, but one
Sure,
thing minimum.
If we could, I mean, am I able to share a screen, or if we can bring up Exhibit B?
I think Cindy Andrews can give you briefly that power, and if the tech works, I trust that you can.
I would say I can go ahead and share my screen and pull
Oh.
up Exhibit B real quick, but you do have a green share your screen button.
Is
So
that what the
let's see if
green?
I can,
Is that
let's
what
see
the
if I
green
can-
means?
yeah, that says
Okay.
share screen. Do you want me to pull it up for you, Stephen?
Either way, I can pull it up just as easily.
Okay, if you can, otherwise
Okay.
I've got it, I can pull it up.
I was gonna say, I never admit to being able to manipulate the screen while I'm talking at the same time. It never works well.
So as we kind of come through this is the utility corridor that we're making the connection to the net shed down here over water. And this slope
Stephen?
has been.
Stephen, I think
I'm
you
not
need to
seeing it
go ahead and
yet.
click on that
Oh.
share screen button. There you
Thank you.
go.
There you go. There
It
it
was
is.
There you
high-
go.
It was
That's-
highlighted. It looked like I was
Yeah,
sharing.
you were looking right at it, right? So if you could, and we'll all try to be quiet. If you could just start over for a minute and kind of
Sure.
just, you don't have to go very, very deep in depth, but
Yeah.
just kind of explain the concept you were just explaining.
So this is the utility corridor, and that we're making our service connection to the net shed down here over water. So the connection is up here in the cul-de-sac in Soundview Lane. And from what I understand, I don't think I've ever seen the easement. But from what I understand, there's a view easement over this slope on this property, which isn't Mr. Tarabochia's, where this slope has been mowed over the years. And so whether that's an actual easement or a prescriptive easement or what it is, I don't think I've ever seen it in my review of this property. But so over the years, the slope has, the saplings have been cut down in order to preserve a view. So in that, it's as we kind of come through this slope and push these pipes down the hill, it's impacts to the vegetation that's existing will be able to be mitigated for with spreading seed or doing some planting where impacts are greater than what we anticipate. So that's kind of already in the plan.
Great. And sorry to interrupt. If you could just give me so there's a couple address numbers that are provided, and
Mhm.
just so I'm tracking as we go, so I don't mix it up in my head. Can you just give me which is which so that I'll make sure that I have it?
Sure. Let me make sure
I mean,
I
if it helps, I'll give you the numbers and you can point, but
see if we've actually, so the
or
so
the
I think it's
parcel
more by,
number.
I think it's more by parcel numbers is how we've denoted it on this plan. So the net shed parcel is actually this piece right here, and that parcel number is 022-108-1064.
Okay, so 6-4 is the net shed itself. So that would
Yep.
be the Puget Sound adjacent, obviously, or
Correct. And
over in places. Okay.
and then there's a portion of the net shed that is in an existing easement from 2009 that is on tax parcel
You can give me the last 3 digits if
5024.
okay, last one. Yeah, okay. So
Yep.
those are the two. Okay. Those are those 2 parcel numbers but they're actually adjacent to each other, and then the easement takes us to a non-adjacent property. Is that right? I don't want to
So,
get it wrong in my head.
so the easement that we need to finalize, kind of after this process, is on the owner of what is lot 3 in a short plat. So that parcel number 5024. So there's a modified easement that needs to be finalized in order to connect the net shed, the existing net shed, which is partially located in an easement and partially located on its own tax parcel. So we're providing an easement from Soundview Lane, essentially, across the property owner of lot 3's property down to the net shed.
Okay.
So it is important to note that there are currently 2 separate easements on that piece of property to accomplish what this is, but those easements weren't well thought out when they were established. One of them is and make sure I don't, so there's an easement on the north side of the property and the south side of the property, one for water, one for sewer. And those were recorded in 2016. And so we'll be relinquishing those 2 easements and providing a modified easement to contain both of the utilities in one route.
Oh, okay, sorry. So you're saying often seems like a dumb thing, but north is up in this case. Is that right? Or is that
correct? North is up, and yep.
There you go. I don't have it open, the actual maps. There we go. I see it now. So you're saying there were two initial easements that ran from the net shed property, which I believe is the 2788 property, correct? 2788 Harborview, or is it not?
Oh yeah, Harborview. Yep.
I mean, if we give it a street address, but you're saying the 2 easements were for the benefit of that property, and the easements ran over the 2854 Soundview property. Does that
correct?
Sound accurate?
And they are easements. Those easements have not been relinquished.
But
so
they're real easements that have been recorded.
Correct.
We don't need to get into the air thing. I don't know I actually don't know. There are some jurisdictions that have tried. I don't think Gig Harbor is one of them. I'm not aware of. We have a few corridors in Washington State and Seattle, very small ones, but that's about all I'm aware of at this point. But I understand. So these are actually recorded, whether you see anything there or not, right? In when you're looking not at the map, but you're relinquishing them to put in the one easement to rule all the effluent.
Correct.
Okay, I think I get it. And just when you say I'm looking at the staff report references 1.17 acres, I'm guessing that's not easement size. That's the size of the entire combined everything. And then the easement itself is just what as big as you need to get. From, oh, I'm not even going there.
Yeah.
Okay. Am I accurate on that?
That is correct. Yeah. So it's
Okay.
the two tax parcels that are involved in this, total that area.
Got it. Both ends. This is just, this is setting me up. I'm gonna keep not talking. Sorry to interrupt. And I think I'm good now, unless you have other sort of topography, other map type things you wanted to point out. I think you could probably stop sharing. at this
Yeah,
point.
no, I think we're,
There we go.
okay. Yeah, and I think in that, just make sure I've kind of went a little off my script.
That was my fault.
No.
That's what I do.
Yeah, and I think from what the city was, talking about with this easement, I think that's kind of where I was going, and kind of what was provided as the draft of the easement. And I think the attachments that the city is asking for is what would be kind of standard. We'd have a exhibit providing the legal description for the easement, and an exhibit providing that graphic example of what that legal description looks like.
Right.
And so
Sorry, I was gonna say,
Yeah.
take a deep breath. But I guess what I was saying is, I thought you all might have a preference to just swap out the older one, or with the corrected or the newer one, it would be Exhibit J as called by the city. But I understand that the new thing is that there's a attachment Exhibit C as part of it. Is that?
correct. So it's missing what would, in order to finalize and record that easement, it's missing the formal elements that we didn't generate while we're still going through the review process with the city and making sure that our route down the slope is going to work with the city's regulations, the shoreline application, all those sorts of things, and then we'll be able to move forward and get that easement. So if it is a matter of adding, updating that attachment B kind of through this process with what that attachment J, not attachment B, attachment J. If it's up,
Okay, this is the problem. See,
yeah.
no, I mean, I want it's best for all of us if we get it right. So I guess in my mind, rather than have multiple things, multiple identifiers, I would just say, I would essentially say that the applicant shall record blah, 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 generally consistent, with the draft utility easement agreement, I mean, is it ready right now? The J, I mean, even it's a draft, but I'm saying the current draft has C as part of it. Is it ready to be included or not? Even if it's a draft that needs more review.
As far as from us, I mean, I don't know if my departments have finalized that document, and if we could send it out later this afternoon or tomorrow morning. I don't know if we're at that stage.
I would say, you know what? I have an idea. Why don't we, I mean, what are you calling? I guess I could open J, I just don't have it in front of me. Is it just being called draft utility easement agreement at the moment?
It's actually an amendment to utility easement agreement. So we're amending those two we're amending the existing utility easements going over the property, and with this new single easement.
Okay, so let me tell you what I was thinking for you and our principal planner, because let's say it's called, exhibit draft utility. I mean, you can keep whatever the actual name is. What my thought is we say that it shall generally be consistent with, quote, the name of it, dated such and such by Soundview, so that it's very explicit, you know, or quote, as further amended by, you know, Soundview and accepted by city staff or something. Just whatever you need to do to make sure that you don't need to come back here and nobody gets confused. The JC, all that stuff, I think, is where we run into problems, but I don't know if I'm helping or making it worse, honestly.
We can get rid of the exhibit C if that would help and just say. I mean, really, the purpose of the condition is just to make sure it gets recorded.
Yeah.
You know, prior to anything else. I would not lose sleep if we got rid of my, you know, additions.
Well,
But
I-
other than,
Right.
like I said, just get rid of the exhibit C and just say shall conform to the approved site plan.
Wait, what, hold on. Okay, I guess my thought was, yeah, if you get rid of the C, you could just say generally consistent or as later approved by the city without giving it that exhibit C thing.
Okay, I'm okay with that.
I'm really, I know it seems nitpicky, but I'm telling you, you know, if people get mad, people will pick on anything, and I just am trying to avoid anything weird like that. So I apologize, but hopefully that makes sense. And what I would suggest is we give it the date of exhibit J at the moment. I'll do this as my job, but I'll say exhibit J dated blah, 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 or as further, and it's not me, you don't have to come back through me. You all just need to agree that this is the final thing. You know, that's all. And nothing further needs to happen in terms of submitting to me. You don't need to leave the record open. I'm leaving a little bit of power there in the city's hands without having to bring it all the way back for this thing, but also making sure that it happens. Does that make sense, Mr. Bridgeford? I'm not trying to make everyone's lives harder, but
No, I think that makes perfect sense.
okay. And I very much interrupted your train of thought. I apologize. That's a terrible trait of mine. But
No, that's why I have a script, so I can not forget where I need to go. So I think that unless you have kind of further questions for me on the layout, which we can also do afterwards, I do have a couple of items of clarification from the recommendation section for the staff report.
why don't we start because I'm already looking at that section. Why don't you start there?
Sure. So I think one is probably just a typo. The item 3 on page 10 refers to the last sentence refers to an exhibit Q.
I was wondering.
So I'm guessing that I don't know if that's exhibit M, but just getting some if there's a exhibit that needs to be added or if it's just a typo.
Typo. I apologize.
But just wait. Well, and wait, hold on. Wait. Now that I'm looking closely, I'm glad I am, because I would have messed that up. Provided in response or notice. Wait, hold on. The applicant shall comply with the comments provided in response to the NOA or the notice of determination of non-significance. Okay, sorry. It's Department of Ecology's comments. They didn't produce the DNS. You did. Essentially, the applicant shall comply with the department's comments dated whatever. In my mind, that tends to make it way clearer in the future when, you know, if you're a clerk at an appellate court or a judge or something, and you're like, which exhibit is that in the 28,000 pages? Go look at the date, is my experience. But I think I get it. And does that then make sense to you, Mr. Bridgeford? But good catch on the Q thing, especially in this day and age.
Yeah. No, I kind of assume that's the April 30th, 2021 letter from Department of Ecology, which I believe we also received. I know I had to clear things up with Fish and Wildlife, and it's just their boilerplate stuff that comes out on everything in Pierce County.
Yep.
Okay, I think it sounds, and I understand that as well, so I think that makes sense. So, I mean, I think technically, yeah, I think yes, because it's sub comments too, right? So that's how it can get, if we just say exhibit P or exhibit, there's multiple comments, so I think a date or whatever is not a bad idea. So, sorry to interrupt.
And then the only other one, which, it's not it's the archaeological monitor piece, and maybe if I can reshare that site plan, it's might be a little share button. So this is actually kind of at this point, this day and age, this is a little dated in the process. So this portion, kind of generally of this piece of property, that's lot 3 of the short plat, a single family home has been built here, or I don't know if it's still being built, but it's vertical and closed in. So, and then so the bulk of our trenching for this project kind of comes in place kind of up here at the top of the slope. I'm sure there'll be some minor dirt work just as you make things work down here, making this connection. But so this trenching area for this corridor, the site's been fairly disturbed. So there's, for the short platting process, a storm line was installed going down the slope and trenched in at this point, and then the single family home itself was trenched in. So I think my comment on it is more just that while, yes, I think there could still be things found in the ground, it's been a pretty disturbed site. And I think on other projects where there's been kind of that level of activity over the year, where there's been some talk about whether or not we need a monitor, past disturbances have kind of ruled it out. So I'm not sure if on that trenching up here, if having an archaeological monitor is really, beneficial, is going to find anything. But I also understand that, the nature of this building is a historical structure, and that potential historical value of there being things in this area is also elevated. So, but it does seem like a little, maybe not as productive as it could be.
Well, I guess the question I would ask of the applicant then ultimately is, the applicant is requesting that I, the hearing examiner, eliminate the requested measure. I mean, or I alter it in some way. I certainly understand the point, and in the last decade, I think say pretty straightforwardly that that type of request has become a lot more straightforward. It's made a lot, no matter where the site is on some level. But as you just pointed out, there are some unique aspects. So I'm trying to understand what specifically is being requested.
In that consideration of whether it's, I don't know if getting staff's opinion on it. I mean, it's just, is there, can we remove the condition of having a monitor in the area that's already been disturbed in the past?
Sorry, can you just stop sharing for a minute?
Yeah.
It's hard to. Okay, so that's all I'm asking is,
Yep.
I haven't decided anything, and I will certainly give staff an opportunity to speak to the issue, but the applicant is of the opinion that there really isn't, we'll call it a nexus in this case, potentially to require that level of oversight related to this issue because the impacts are unlikely. Is that, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, I'm just trying to think through what the idea is. Is that about right?
No, that's a good summary.
Okay. Thank you. I certainly don't have an answer yet. I just, I know what the concern is for both sides. So,
you know, in that, I also like seeing that the tribes have become, you know, I feel like there's a time in my career where we didn't hear from them on projects, and that they are more involved and giving us more feedback is beneficial for sure. But so in that, in those closures, or in those are kind of the only items, other than some of the ones that you had brought up on more specificity on 10 and 11. I don't have any other comments, and I think in agreement with the staff report, I feel this project, you know, meets the requirements of the zoning code, the comprehensive plan, and the shoreline master program.
Great. So the things I brought up there on those, you concur with, the applicant does, the preference to have it be a little more specific.
Mhm.
Okay, before I go to staff, or if you have others on your team you want me to hear from, I just really quickly, wanted to ask, I believe our planner testified to it, but as far as we know, or maybe you did, no other permits from other agencies are going to be required. Because there's, as far as we know, no in-water work, so we don't need any kind of HPA. We don't need a section 10 from Army Corps, any of that stuff. Is that an accurate assessment to the best of your knowledge? Meaning the buck stops here with, you know, kind of next steps. And I think you're muted, Mr. Bridgeford.
Correct. That's my understanding, is that it's the permitting is solely through the city of Gig Harbor.
Okay, but my only question on that note, the one thing I was going to ask is, and just to ensure, is that for whatever reason, if some in-water work needed to occur and it was determined that something needed to happen with one of those other agencies, you know, the applicant acknowledges that if there was significant work, they might have to change the creosote out or cap it or one of those things. I'm not saying now, but they understand if situations change, you're going to have to go listen to those agencies with expertise. Is that kind of an obvious?
Correct. Yes. Yeah. If anything were to change in the scope of the project, we would have to involve other state agencies.
Right. But that was the one, you know, it's not uncommon, even in this exact area, when there's in-water work for a pier of any kind, you know, which there is not in-water work, right? I mean, but when it happens, then it's okay, you got to change them out, or you got to cap them, but I think it's because it hasn't tipped. That's the point. But as long as people are aware that if that happens, you know, you probably need to stop and talk to planning staff and engineers.
Understood.
You don't want to have to come back and be on I don't even think that goes to me. I think that goes to a bigger, scarier group of the federal government. So, okay, just making sure so people know. I always encourage not asking for forgiveness, especially with the environment. So that was it, I think, that I had for the applicant. Do you have anyone else on your team you wanted to call upon?
Kyle, do you or Nick is there anything that you guys want to add? No, I think we are good.
Great, thank you. And I think our only attendee is a member of staff. Yep, Jeremy Hammer. Okay, so why don't we go back to Robin Bolster Grant to see if she had any final thoughts. You know, maybe you can work from what we started on just at the end, or I said that horribly. Why don't you pick up where we left off and then go backward?
Well, I did just sorry, on what Stephen was bringing up with the archaeological monitor. I don't disagree. It has been our practice to defer. You know, we don't have somebody on staff who is trained in archaeological or historical resources. So we tend to defer. I guess my question would be, you know, the downside in terms of how long, if it's, if you're concerned about, you know, how much time is gonna be spent, or if it's gonna delay the project. I guess I'm trying to, you know, to weigh those things, because I did consider it, and just sticking with the inadvertent discovery plan. But again, I erred on the side of caution. So, but I don't know, it seemed to me that that the portion of ground disturbance was not significant. And so even if it has been historically disturbed, it didn't seem to me like it would take, you know, days and days of observation. So I guess it's sort of more of a question about what you anticipate that would, you know, what would be in terms of time for those, the ground disturbance portion, like days, several days.
So I think that was a specific question
That was a question.
for
Sorry.
Mr. Bridgeford. And when you say ground disturbing, you mean trenching specifically?
Trenching,
You
really,
also
yeah,
mean-
yeah, not like touching the dirt, but
Well-
yeah, trenching, really.
Okay,
And I think it's more just, I think it's more just time and cost on the monitor. I mean, I know in the past when we've had projects where, especially archaeological reports, which I know that's not what's being asked, but the time, you know, the time constraints, there aren't as many people that do that in our, at least there haven't in the past, been as many people that do that, and it can cause delays on moving a project forward. So so in my thinking of if the probabilities, I mean, probabilities are probably always low finding things, but if it's already a fairly disturbed, kind of churned up area, and delaying a project to bring somebody out to monitor it, does it have a return on the scope and the impacts that the projects could have?
well, I've been put in the position in many jurisdictions of having to potentially weigh these things and come up with one way or the other, or something creative. You know, if you all would like me to do that and you don't like what I come up with, I believe you can ask for reconsideration, but I'd be willing to come up with something. I know you're already trying the middle path of not requiring a full-blown, you know, report.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. One thought I had was, you know, the person that often makes the comment has a specific role, right, in it for the tribe or tribal entity, and they're kind of often scrambling last minute, and they go, you know, let's be safe. They probably looked on Wizard, the web, you know, the website, but then there probably are other folks that are experts. So what I have said in the past as a potential is, you know, acknowledging that, you know, there may be the need for additional oversight during construction. Let's get another opinion from the monitoring expert at, you know, DHP or one of these specific tribes. And if they say, I know that area is fine, then the city needs to live with it. It can cut both ways. I'm just giving you an option. It tends to be quicker, meaning they don't have to go out, you know, they don't
Yeah.
have to, or they look at the plans and they know the area, but I'm saying they're not there. You don't have to wait for the day they're available to be there to watch for 10 hours. Up to you guys. I'm thinking
I
through.
don't have
what
a problem with
options are.
it. I, you know, I want to honor the comments made, but it's very possible that they, you know, didn't look that closely at the history of the site or the plans. I mean, anything is possible. So I'm open to that. I do want to acknowledge their comment though in some way.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm also, I think that's a reasonable option as well. And the kind of what I had mentioned in the beginning, this plan set from when it was generated to kind of what's in the ground now, you know, a home was built, as I said, on the lot 3. There was also another home built immediately to the north of this. So this plan set, what somebody would have looked at an external agency that maybe had 15 minutes at the most to consider it, doesn't really do justice to what's in the ground, to what's out there now, and give them an ability to comment on it with kind of all the information. If the SEPA, I guess I don't remember what the date the SEPA went out, but I think it was in the last SEPA comments went out. I don't know if it was at the beginning of the project or if it was more recently.
Final determination was last month.
Wait,
Yeah,
all right, hold on, sorry.
Mhm.
Now, I should have not opened my mouth, I guess, because I didn't put 2 and 2 together. Was that a requirement of, no, it wasn't a requirement of SEPA, because it was a DNS. Okay. I would, if there was no appeal of the SEPA, I would not have the authority to just alter a mitigation requirement. In my mind, I think legally, there's been fights about this recently. But in terms of the recommended conditions that experts like staff have made, terrifyingly, I can do whatever I want. It might lead to bad results for me, but this is a middle ground I was trying to think of as reasonable, and essentially rather than, you know, planning staff immediately kind of deciding something or you guys immediately challenging, we kind of kick it back to the tribal experts, you know, entities or, you know, DAHP for another opinion, and you guys live with what they come up with. And that's, you know, that would be a thought, but you know, I'm gonna ultimately, you know, I get both sides. I just want to give you an opportunity to see if this seems reasonable or not. I'm trying to. I've run into this a lot in the last few years, in particular. So I'll go with just to make sure we knew what I was suggesting. Robin Bolster Grant, your final thought on that issue.
I'm happy with your suggestion. I will only cop to the fact that I have not dealt directly with DAP or this would be new territory for me to go back and say, hey, what do you guys think? So if that's something you're familiar with, then there's some breadcrumbs on what that looks like. I'm okay with that.
Well, you just blame it on me if that's what I write in the decision. It's nothing you did, but your thoughts, Mr. Bridgeford.
I think that's a reasonable alternative to just to make sure they have the best available information, and if they still feel like it's a suitable way to go to bring a monitor out, then that's fine.
Okay, so I'll think through what I'm gonna do, how to use the wording, but at least I have on the record that it didn't seem like the worst idea, and you know, I'll put some good thought into that. So was that it in terms of the conditions you wanted to discuss? The conditions folks were hoping to talk about is what I'm saying?
Yes.
Yes, okay. And just so I'm clear, I don't know if I just want to make sure I didn't misunderstand anything, that in terms of parcel numbers, again, was I right in thinking that the 2 parcel numbers are not the 2 different addresses? Meaning that we've got tax parcel numbers and then we've got location addresses. And I thought basically the one address has 2 parcel numbers and the easement is, or is it the other way? Or is it they line up? I just want to, did I overly confuse myself? I know
Parcel number has a
064 is.
separate
Go ahead,
address. Sorry, whose turn?
I'm gonna say, Robin Bolster Grant, you please tell me, now that I'm saying it out loud, I think that Stephen did explain it, but I just no longer have the map in front of me, but.
Right, so 2854 Soundview Lane is the large parcel to the west, and that corresponds with the parcel number ending in 5024. And then the parcel occupied by the net shed is 2788 Harbor View Drive, corresponding with the parcel number ending in 1064.
Okay, so I understood it, then I didn't understand it just now, and not just now, 8 seconds ago, and now I understand it again. I shouldn't overly confuse myself. And just so, again, nothing, nothing, no major mistakes. The applicant is the owner of the net shed parcel, not both. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. And so the bigger parcel would be, in this case, I guess it'd be the servient parcel if we're talking easements, but we don't need to get into all that, but I think I get it fully. Thank you. I think that was the last clarification there that I had. So I think I'm happy to hear if others had thoughts. The only other thing I wanted to just touch on very quickly was Robin Bolster-Grant, you're confident that the notice was non-problematic, meaning that reasonable notice was given, and what the bigger problem was just telling the people that were the applicants, not the public at large. Was that my understanding was correct?
That's my understanding as well. Yes, thank you.
Okay, and I think anything further than from the applicant, I think I think I have said more than I probably needed to. Stephen Bridgeford, anything further on behalf of the applicant?
Nothing further from the applicant.
Okay, so, and nothing further from planning staff or anyone
Correct.
else?
We are done. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, so ultimately then, I think we ended up with A as in Andrew through, couldn't think of a good baseball one. P is in something baseball related, nothing about this project, or effluent, but P is in public hearing. A through P were the exhibits that I admitted. There's gonna be slight change to some of the conditions, and exhibit J in particular, we know it is what it is right now, but there'll be a little bit further review of a revised one that does not need to come to me. I'm leaving that, between you folks, confident that you'll understand it better than me. My point being, I believe we can close the record. I don't think there's anything further that I need to review before I ultimately make a decision. And so that will be my plan, and the hope will be that we'll be able to get that back to the parties and anyone else interested in the next we'll say 2 weeks is the plan. So does that track and make sense? And I don't think we have any members of the public. I was going to say, sometimes I'll ask, where can people find the decision, but nobody's here, so we don't need to do that. So thank you all. Thank you, Mr. Bridgeford and your team. It's always nice to get a group that is willing to participate, even if they didn't have to talk. So thank you all for being here. And I think I'm going to stay on just for a non-related matter, if I could, to just talk to Cindy Andrews and Robin Bolster-Grant briefly. So rudely kicking everyone else off, but I do appreciate it. And we can stop the recording. Sorry, I should have said
Correct.
that.
I'll go ahead and stop the recording now.
Yeah, just procedural, unrelated to this project.